Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Texas is proud to sponsor events like the one you're about to see because we love to see Texans get involved in public dialogue and civic engagement.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the second session of our symposium agenda, a discussion of the forthcoming Phelan Administration. That would be Dade Phelan, Speaker Presumptive of the Texas House in the 87th session. Whenever there's a new leader fixing to be at the head of the chamber, we have questions. Who is this guy? Where did he come from? Where is he taking us? And what does this say about our politics, our issues, and this state? We've asked 3 House members who know him well enough to have been early supporters of his bid for the job to help us better understand what he's about and why he's the right choice to lead them. So happy to be joined by Angie Chen Button, Republican of Dallas, first elected to represent District 112 in the House in 2008. In the 86th legislative session, she chairs the Urban Affairs Committee and sits on the Higher Education Committee. She's a native of Taiwan and a graduate of National Taiwan University and the University of Texas at Dallas. Todd Hunter is in his 10th term representing Nueces County in the Texas House, 2 terms in the old District 36, 8 in District 32, 4 as a Democrat, 6 as a Republican. Got that? In the 86th session, he sits on the Criminal Jurisprudence and State Affairs Committees. He's a native of Oklahoma, has an undergraduate degree from the University of Kansas and a law degree from Southern Methodist University. Finally, Joe Moody, Democrat of El Paso, in his 5th term representing House District 78. This session, he's the Speaker pro tempore of the Texas House, is Vice Chair of the Calendars Committee, and sits on the Business and Industry, Criminal Jurisprudence, and Redistricting Committees. A native of El Paso, he has an undergraduate degree from New Mexico State University and a law degree from Texas Tech University. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us. Representative Hunter, I'm going to begin with you. Why Dade Phelan? What made anybody think that he was the one?
Well, Dade has a tremendous background. He is unique because he started as a staffer. He began his career as a staffer in the House. And before Angie and Joe were born, I was there in the House during that time period. Yeah. And I got to know Dave. Then he went on and he also learned the Senate. And then he's risen greatly. He's been very, very reach out to everybody in the House. You got a great person for what we've got: House, Senate, staff training, and Evan, he's got a lot of leadership in the House of Representatives.
Representative Button, is that something that you saw as well, that he had leadership potential? Would you have thought of him before there was an open speaker's race as a future speaker?
Well, like Chairman Hunter said, definitely Chairman Phelan, I refer him as a soon-to-be speaker, Phelan. And he's definitely very, very qualified to lead all of us, especially next session is going to be very, very stressful and tough. But I like to share some personal story. I think that will make it more interesting.
Sure.
Let me just give you an example. During the last session, at that time, Chairman of the State Affairs Committee, Chairman Phelan, came to my desk and said, Chairman Button, I need to talk to you. I said, go ahead. He said, I have this very important bill, And then he said, it's important to my district and to me, but I also understand your district might not like it. It is quite okay if you decide not to support it. You have to support whatever your district wants you to do. And I appreciate that. And I respect that. I was, wow.
Yeah.
What a nice person. Because usually if we have to go against a big chairman's important bill, we will go to say, hey, Chairman, Speaker Pro Tem Moody, I'm so sorry. I love you, but this bill, I really cannot do it because my district, da, 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 da. So, of course, I did my study already, and also I did an additional study. I actually have about 7 cities. There's one city does have some concerns about this bill, but the other cities have no problem. But the bottom line is, I left the impression, you know what? This young gentleman, relatively young to chair such an important committee, he does have a great leadership because first, he respects people from his heart.
Yeah.
Second, he takes time to communicate to people. Third, definitely, he is trustworthy. That's why I had such a great impression about him since then.
Yeah. Well, those are all things we're going to come back to, Representative Button. I appreciate that. Representative Moody, it's a little bit like the presidency, what they say about Congress, that you've got 435 members of the U.S. House, and every morning when they wake up and look in the mirror, they see a future president staring back at them. Isn't that also the case with the Texas House? 150 members, every morning they get up and they look in the mirror and they see a future speaker staring back with them. Everybody thinks they can be speaker, right?
Perhaps we went through more of that exercise this last cycle than we ever have.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but the fact is that not everybody in the building who thinks they may be speaker has that opinion shared by others. And you were one of the earliest people to see that, this guy who not a lot of people know, if he crossed the street to come talk to you, if you're a civilian, somebody from outside of the building, you might not even recognize him or know his name. You recognized early that he was one of those who actually might have a legitimate claim on this.
Look, leadership and trust, and Chair Button mentioned that those two qualities, they show themselves in different ways, but in two major ways, in my opinion. When someone does something, when no one is looking and they have nothing to gain, or when everyone is looking and they have something to lose. In my experience with Chairman Phelan, he has proven to me in both instances that he is a leader and he is trustworthy. Yeah.
Chairman Moody, Speaker Moody, I want to ask you about this speakership in the context of the last, again, back to presidential elections, just like every presidential race is about the next 4 years. It's really about the last 4 years. And I would have to say the same about the speakership. We're looking ahead 2 years, but it can't be considered not against the backdrop of the last speakership. So how do we think about Speaker Presumptive Phelan in the context of what we just witnessed for the last 2 years? How is that a helpful frame for us?
Well, I think every session is a different session, and every individual has their own relationships that they build. And I think that's actually one of the main strengths that you saw emerge in this particular speaker's race was a broad coalition, a diverse coalition. It's always a little bit interesting being from the minority party, as I've been my entire career, because obviously we'd like to choose one of our own at one of these days. But and this will be the third time that I've been involved in a race where we're looking at the other side of the aisle. But the beauty of the system beauty of the system we have in the Texas House, as opposed to Washington D.C., is we are thrown into an environment in which we're not in an echo chamber. We're in a room where people disagree with us, and we have to figure out how to build consensus and to collaborate, right? And so last session, 140 days of session, there was a lot of success for the body. There was a lot that was done to achieve major goals on public school finance, on other issues. We advanced the ball on criminal justice reform more than we had ever before. And so I think those are the building blocks that we can build on top of. Institutionally, the building, the house was running better and the building was running better. And I think those are great building blocks to move forward.
Chairman Hunter, you're the person who served under the most speakers on this call. You also have the distinction of having served under a Democratic speaker, if I'm not mistaken, right, in your first stint in the House. So you have some experience here comparing speakers to one another. How do you put this potential speaker, he'll won't be speaker until gaveling in January, how do you put him up against the last speaker, Speaker Bonin? How is he alike? How is he different?
Well, both of them have different approaches to leadership. Both are longtime friends. And the great thing about both of them, Evan, they're both from the coast. So they have to be great folks right there. So
that's all you care about, right? We
that's-
we got to the bottom of it. That's it.
You know,
Yeah.
even Chairman Moody has enough sand out there. We adopt him as part of the coast out there. So, no,
Yeah.
it's really not a comparison. It's really just leadership styles. And what you're going to see is the presumptive Speaker Phelan. He's going to know how to call balls and strikes, just like Speaker Bonnet. They both are going to
Yep.
reach out. The good thing about Dade is we have a unique situation. When I was chair of calendars, he was a member. When he was chair of state affairs, I was a member. I've seen him operate. He's excellent. He's
Right.
A+, and he'll do a great job.
Chair Button, you mentioned the issue of trust. I mean, if we're going to talk about Speaker Presumptive Phelan in the context of the current Speaker, Speaker Bonnet, we have to acknowledge that we have to look at Speaker Phelan's ascent against the backdrop of Speaker Bonnet's descent, the way the current Speaker got into enough trouble that he felt like he had to step aside. Without getting into it too much, there were trust issues, and there was a goodwill deficit in your caucus. And you called out the trust issue with Speaker Phelan. He addresses what may have been some of the concerns of the last 6 months, you think?
Let me just give you one good example that actually I would like to mention the speaker before Speaker Bonnet as one good example as well. Okay, Speaker Strauss, because he became the speaker. That's when I got elected to serve in the State House. So I always joke about with Speaker Strauss is because my vote making to be a speaker, and he always laugh at that. And Speaker Strauss is somebody very sincere, very low key, and you can kind of like go to talk to him anytime for anything you want to talk. Speaker Bonnet is very, very dynamic, has a lot of charisma, very vocal. Although we all know that got him into some issues, but he does have a lot of good qualities. Let's not forget about that. And then the speaker, soon to be Phelan, he's so sincere. Like the example I mentioned, you feel like he is just one of you. And actually, the other day he had a teleconference with the caucus members. And he joked about that when he went back home, he has 4 kids. They're all boys. Can you imagine the household? It's going to be really noisy. Okay. But then he said when he went home, he just a daddy with 4 wild boys. Okay. So I like that kind of attitude. That make you feel like he's very, very approachable. And one thing I always talk about why I think Austin is a much better place than Washington D.C. is, in D.C. winners take all. So chairmanship, everything, but in Texas, in Austin, we give a kind of based on the ratio, the seats, and we combine everybody together. Even we're can be sitting next to a longtime Democrat or whatever. It doesn't matter. We need to work together. It goes back to the trust. And I think the speaker, Speaker soon to be Phelan does have the great quality that make us to trust him.
Chairman Hunter, this is a good place to talk about him and the qualities about him that have been appealing to people. I read the Texas Tribune like all of you do, and I read Cassie Pollock's story last week about Speaker Presumptive Phelan, and some of the words that jumped out at me: straight shooter, hardworking, accommodating, again, back to earning trust, works with people from different perspectives. That may get him off of Alan West's Christmas card list this year, right? Young, but not too young, to Representative Button's point. Commercial real estate business, 4 young kids, boys, wife named Kim. Apparently that's a requirement to be speaker these days, is you have to have a spouse named Kim. And again, as you said, he was a staffer. He worked for Representative Mark Stiles. He worked for Senator Tommy Williams. He worked for Congressman Dick Armey, right? I mean, these are all the ingredients of who this guy is. That all describes him, as far as you know, pretty well?
It does. And the greatest thing, which I think Angie and Joe will say, you've got a very sincere, down to earth, pleasant, personable gentleman, and he's going to do a great job. And you know what? You just feel like you want to visit with him, and he reaches out to all the members. So he's got some great, great qualities, and we look forward to working with him.
And you would agree, Chairman Hunter, to what Chair Button said about working with the other side. You obviously have been on the other side. I mean, you have a specific understanding of the complexities of this. Working with Democrats is a feature and not a bug in this.
Absolutely. We got to remember the House is 150 districts. That's Democrat and Republican in different regions of the state. And we are a House of 150, and Dade Phelan will be reaching out to all 150.
All of those. Speaker Moody, is that why the Democrats wanted him? Because he was willing to work with both sides? I mean, that's an interesting question to me. You know, he's a conservative, right? I mean, I realize you guys didn't have a majority, so you couldn't elect one of yours. But, you know, I remember when Democrats said we're never going to vote for somebody for speaker who voted for the Schaefer Amendment on sanctuary cities. I mean, the fact is this guy is a Republican. He is a conservative, but you're confident enough that he wants to work with you that you're willing to look past your differences.
Look, differences exist in the Democratic caucus between what I would do and what other members would do on a number of issues. The same thing in the Republican caucus. Differences exist in politics. My wife and I, this may shock people, my wife and I have differences of opinions from time to time on very important issues. They come up. We work through them. It's this is why I reject a lot of the ways people think about politics in a very binary way. It very rarely is that. So would I like to be picking someone from the Democratic caucus? Sure. That's something that I would like to do at some point in my career before they kick me out of here. But the fact of the matter is, if we're making the decision on the Republican side of the aisle, we know there's going to be differences of opinion. We know, as far as I know, every member over there in that caucus is more conservative than I am. So we start there. Right. And that's okay.
Did you get assurances, Speaker, did you get assurances, or did the Democrats in the House get assurances of committee chairmanships and other things that would give you confidence he wants to continue the tradition of working with the other side in that way?
No, I mean, I don't think you can't really cut deals like that in the speaker's race. It's not appropriate.
You don't cut deals in the speaker's race? Really? Next, you're going to tell me water is wet. Come on, man.
No,
you don't cut deals?
I'm sorry. You know who people are. And I know how people conduct their business. And so, do I think that Chair Button, Chair Hunter, myself will get a fair shake as much as other members will in the administration? Sure, right. I think we will. But that's based on my knowledge of Chairman Phelan, the way that he operates. And you use the word straight shooter, and I know it's a cliche, but it's true. And I mentioned it earlier. You know, I had an effort this last session that was very difficult, very challenging. Went through quite a bit of tumult on the floor, and Chairman Phelan stood up from his desk and walked over to the back mic and engaged in some back and forth questions, and talked about how he thought that effort was a good effort. He didn't have to. There was nothing to be gained by doing that. Nothing.
Right.
But
it told you something about who he was.
That told me all I needed to know about him. Yeah. He stood up when he didn't have to stand up. Are we going to agree on everything? No, Lord, no. But I know that he's, when the chips are down, you're going to get a fair shake.
Yeah. Chair Hunter, let me make the point in the inverse that Chair Moody made. Chair Moody said, well, Speaker Moody, the Democrats don't get along in the caucus. Well, the Republicans don't get along in the caucus either. We know that to be the case. I'm remembering back to the State Affairs Committee, which Speaker Presumptive Phelan chaired during this session. And there was a bill to override cities requiring businesses to offer employees paid sick leave. This is a seemingly mundane local control bill. And it became a hot potato because the Senate stripped language protecting non-discrimination ordinances from the bill on their side, potentially leaving LGBTQ Texans vulnerable. So the bill runs through State Affairs. Chair Phelan restores the language protecting those ordinances. And the next morning, he told me, actually, in an interview, I'm done talking about bashing on the gay community. This has gotten him criticized by some in the Republican Party, right? Texas Values Action, among others, have criticized him for this. Can the Republicans come together? I mean, I know we're talking about, will the Democrats be able to unite in their caucus? Are the Republicans, generally speaking, all good with this guy?
I can't speak for all of the 150, but will the Republicans and will the Democrats come together? I'm going to look at the glass half full, and it's going to be full. The answer is yes. We're going to come together on the core issues. With coronavirus, COVID-19, the agenda could be very, very narrow this session. And Dave Phelan is the perfect person for the situation. But I'm going to be positive. I think the Democrats, I think the Republicans are going to come together on the key issues. You'll always have differences of opinion. Sometimes it's more regional than it is partisan. But I think you will see us coming together on the major issues and on most of the issues.
This will be a unity speakership in that
respect. I do. I really believe
Chair Hunter. Yeah. Chair Button, one of the things that came up last session following the Strauss speakership over 5 terms was whether the House was sufficiently positioned to be on an even footing with the Senate. What was said about Speaker Bonin was he knew how to make a fist. In fact, he knew how to make 2 fists, and that he would be able to go toe-to-toe with the lieutenant governor and that the House would be on a good footing with the Senate. How do you feel about that with regard to Speaker Presumptive Phelan? Will he be able to play that same role, defending the House and going up against the Senate to be sure that the House doesn't get rolled?
I don't have any doubts. Even, look at it, he's relatively not as big as the lieutenant governor, as we all know. But then his strength and the coalition he's able to build in such a short time to bring himself right to in this position, which demonstrates he has great potential. And I don't think that we need to have any concerns about if he's going to speak up and represent our chamber. And on the other hand, I don't think we need to always fight. The reason is, as the Chairman Hunter mentioned, we're going to focus on the big items. Next session, it's going to be with COVID-19 and also the economic recovery and the budget shortfall, everything. We got enough big items. We need to really, really work together. And when I lose sleep that Speaker Phelan will not express my concerns, no, definitely not.
No.
I know he will go all the way. And actually, that's one thing. He reminds me a little bit about the Speaker Strauss. Is they all kind of soft speaking, relatively young and should I say good-looking type of leaders, which kind of sometimes will charm you. Then you forget about you gotta go all the way fight back. Actually, they will be able to achieve their goals without appearing that they are head against head with you. And I think that that's a very good asset.
Speaker Moody, the other thing about Speaker Bonin, his toughness was one of the things often commented upon. The other was his resolute focus. He was absolutely committed to getting school finance reform done, right down to the printed styrofoam cups you'll remember in the members' lounge, right? He was absolutely focused. So, Speaker Moody, what will the styrofoam cups in Speaker Phelan's administration say? Will it be, as both Chair Hunter and Chair Button have suggested, something specifically around the coronavirus? Is that the big priority in this session?
Well, we won't have the styrofoam cups because of COVID, and we won't be able to share.
It's a trick question. There you go. That was a trap. Yeah, good job.
I'm quite serious. Those discussions have been had about the styrofoam cups that we have in the members' lounge. It's maybe not the most critical issue. And I'm kidding a little bit, but I mean, that is a good way to point out that this is going to be a very different session because the way that we interact, what we're doing right now is the way that we're probably going to meet with our constituents. We're going to meet with stakeholders. We're going to meet with maybe some of our colleagues about bills and things like that. Maybe we may change the rules to allow some committees to have virtual participation from members. So there's a lot. But going back to your question, the key to this session is very straightforward, and it is the Texas recovery, whether that be economic or health. If we are focused on anything other than the economic and the healthcare recovery of this state, then we're not spending our time wisely. That is what the people back home desperately need, and it is our first opportunity. We have not had a chance as a legislature to weigh in on the response and the recovery. This is our opportunity. We have a very short window to do it. We're going to have a very slowed down process. And so from day 1 to day 140, that needs to be our focus, in my opinion.
We have about a minute left. Chair Hunter, I want to ask you the last question here. You know, the old saying about politics is you campaign in poetry, but you govern in prose. You can have a lofty vision when you're the candidate, but there's a cold, hard reality when you're in the job, right? It gets a lot more complicated. Do you think that this session is going to be that straightforward, and can he manage a session that is that straightforwardly focused? You know, you can't talk about your ideals and your vision when you're facing the kind of need for a recovery, as Speaker Moody said. You got to get down to brass tacks. You're confident that that's what this session is going to be like?
Absolutely. I think he is the person for the job. As you reminded us, when you are staff trained from the House and the Senate, and you have held leadership positions in the House, state affairs, and he's been on calendars. The key thing is you have an experienced individual. You have an individual that will reach out to the members. I think we're going to have a successful session. I think he's going to be a great speaker.
Good. All right. Well, we'll see. We're going to know soon enough here, as the 140 days will begin just a few weeks from now. Chair Button, Chair Hunter, Speaker Moody, thank you very much for joining us. And to everybody who tuned in today, thank you. I hope you enjoy the rest of the week of our symposium. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you for having us. Thank you. Enjoy it.